Greetings! I'm excited to share with you a case study about a client that we helped using not the burn down chart, which is really popular in Agile software methodology, but a burn up chart along with behavioral assessments. So here we go. This client that we helped came to us and was saying, there's something wrong. We have this team, and this is a software development company that brought me in, brought my people in. And the software development company has another client that they're trying to help build some software for them. And um, there were a number of problems, and it wasn't quite clear what the issue was, except that they had a bunch of people who were on payroll who were supposed to be serving this client and making back the money that was being spent having them do that work. And they weren't really covering their costs. There also wasn't like a lot of progress happening with the client, and it wasn't clear if it was the client's problem and the team needed to push them, or if it was the team itself. And on top of all of this, there was a deadline. This needed to get done for this conference. So lots of frustration, lots of excuses from different parties, but not like a lot of momentum going forward. So, but you know what? I'm going to take a look. So what I did is, of course, the first question is, who are these humans that we were dealing with? Um, how much capacity do they have? Sometimes you run into this issue and it's because they just don't have enough bandwidth to do the work. Well, the team actually comprised five individuals. You had a full stack developer that was actually on contract on loan from another company. You had someone who was an application developer. They were just working half time, but if needed, they could have more time. We also had a full stack engineer that was also half time, could be full time. We had a product manager who was in charge of like what's getting built and why, and was the main like client liaison. And then we also had a project manager whose job was to manage the team and understand status and who was working on what and by when they would have it finished. So this was a team that I interviewed and got some one-on-ones with to figure out who was doing what. And with that information, I said, let's make a burn-up chart. So burn-up chart is here's a little view of it. Um, so let me describe what we have here. In the vertical axis, we have the billable hours logged month to date. And I wanted to look at not the current month I was in, but I wanted to look at the past. So I got the hours that were being billed by each individual every day or every week. And I would aggregate that to look at progress. And we knew what the break even was because the leadership provided that to me. And I just wanted to see like what the pattern was because in a normal team, you're gonna have people billing roughly the same amount of time every week except for vacations. And you'll see the slope of the line look like it's in line with kind of what the goals are. Um, it should be growing. And in this example of a burn down chart, you won't have the line go down. So if you see any of that, it's because my line ability to draw wasn't great, but it always goes up. It's in aggregate. And what we were looking at is we knew what the max capacity of the team was, and we knew what the break even point was for covering the costs and it just wasn't obviously it's not getting there. But it gave me a better picture of like, do you have people billing at a regular cadence, and is that cadence getting to the goal or not? The other thing I wanted to understand out of this was the team hesitant to actually do any of the work because there was some fear about you know using money uh, incurring expenses that were not productive for the client, or were they just paralyzed with indecision about anything. And you can actually kind of see that in some of these charts. So clearly it's not working. And for those of you that are like, isn't there something more important than how many hours the software company bills? What about the actual progress of building some software that's meaningful for the client. Yes, that's true. One of the challenges though is there was no way to know because how startups work and how they're um, changing priorities as they get new client information or new information from customers. Um, there's a lot of different variables that come into play. But obviously, if the team isn't billing any hours or is billing a lot fewer, this isn't a profitable arrangement. So the agency that's doing this work, they might as well just cancel this contract and just call it quits with the client unless this situation can change. And I can also tell you that they were not actually delivering that much value. A lot of this was just meetings of, hey, is anything going on? Are we doing it yet? What's up? And not really moving forward. The other thing we looked at, and I have some other videos floating around where I talk about how much I love Aptive Index, which this is just showing on two axes, two of the 12 different variables that you can understand about the dynamics of natural ability, natural behavior between different individuals. And it's like a 10-minute little assessment. It's super valuable to figure out some of these issues. So here I've mocked up a rough example of what we were seeing. Because every week, I just showed you what the previous month looked like. We did a burn down chart for the current uh, daily month, the current month, and every day, every week, I was sitting down with leadership to say, okay, so it's still not where we want it to be. What can we change? Do we need to add someone? Do we need to subtract somebody? Do we need to have a different conversation with the client? So it was troubleshooting it every day, every week. And one of the first things we looked at was what's the team composition? And just for fun, I'll tell you, like, if I were on this chart, I would be up here. I am like, I want to move fast. I don't care about the details, which is not always that great in software development. But I have a vision about where we're going. Just want people to follow me, and I'm quite social. So that's why I end up over here. What we had on the team is we had, and this is totally normal with software developers, with QA people. We had a lot of people who were more detail focused than they were vision focused. Their comfort with ambiguity was stretching them, and in some cases it could exhaust them. And they'd rather move slow and deliberately with consistency than deal with a lot of unknowns and moving quickly. The whole concept of move quick, if you're not moving quickly enough to and that you're breaking stuff, then you're not moving quickly enough. That comes from those entrepreneurs that live up here um, on the chart. But you can see here we've got a pretty objective, detail focused team that is struggling a bit. At least it, I would be really surprised if we were experiencing what we were with the team if everybody was up in one of the different, the top quadrants. But this was very telling. So we needed some help here, especially since the client CEO is probably up here somewhere. Which is a very typical place you'll see entrepreneurs so what we did is we pushed the team before we made any changes. Let's see how we can move forward. And early in the month, it was like this, and then you'll notice that things picked up, and we managed to actually exceed the break-even point. And the way that we did that is every week or so, we were making a change to the team. And I marked here the changes that we made. Some of the first things we did is we added QA. We added a product client engagement person who was really social and like going to focus on the liaison and leading the meetings and driving towards some progress and solutions to support the detail heavy high quality but just more somebody needed to be the bridge with the client to handle that. So brought in somebody to do QA as well as to do product and client engagement. We also brought in another QA person who was more detail focused. And eventually we decided to move the project manager to a different team where they would be more supported. And we brought in a different project manager that was more above the line here. That comfort with ambiguity, that desire to move a little bit more quickly. and that could also bridge with the rest of the team here. So that really kicked things up a notch. So not only were we adding some more people to build, but more importantly, like we were missing some roles and missing some behavioral people with certain tendencies to round out the team. Um, we didn't actually increase the break-even point by adding all those extra people as much as you would think. A number of them were still billing by the hour, so we weren't really worried about that. So it increased it a bit, but it definitely increased our ability to be productive a lot more. And you can see like we had a great month after through the course of making all of those changes here. First it was just a moderate break even, and then we were close to maxing out on our capacity. But then we introduced some new problems. So now that we fixed the profitability of the team, we really wanted to look at what are we shooting for the goal. And so here's the break even, the new break even with the expanded team. And I've put in here on a month by month basis kind of what we were seeing as billables. But we, at the same time, this team was driving and encouraging and um, relentlessly asking questions of the client in a way that they weren't previous to me getting involved about what the scope was. And not that they were estimating the whole thing, but it was very clear when we took even some of the minimum features of the client was like, we've got to have this when we go to that conference. And we just scoped some of those out and we're like, man, we need a lot more help on the application development side of things. Like it's just not there's not enough hours in the day for this one person to do all the work. And they were actually like, oh, I can make it work. I'll work overtime. But it just wasn't fair to them or to other people to expect that for the remaining time that we had to hit our goal in the project. So what we realized is we actually needed probably twice as much uh, development time and engineering hours than we had if we were to hit the minimum milestones that the client wanted to hit. And of course, one of the things we encouraged and we did here is we made sure to work with the client to say, we may not hit all of these features in scope. So let's prioritize. Let's get ruthless about saying what is the most important thing, and we'll hit that first. And then if we manage to push that out and you're happy with it, and we removed all of the bugs that will screw you up at the conference, we'll work on the second one and the third one, and so on and so forth. So that is the approach that we took. We also revealed some things like there wasn't going to be great Wi-Fi at the conference, so we couldn't rely on server-side stuff. So even though server-side processing was going to be a big part of the application, when we actually went live, for the purpose of the unveiling at the conference, it was going to be a really bad experience if people were just getting 404s or not even 404s, but just erroring out because there wasn't any way to use the application natively. So there was a couple of things we had to do to create the experience to allow them to accomplish the goals of that conference. Quite different than just putting an app out. So all this swirl is going on. You can imagine how difficult it is to try to just make a big giant estimate and take a waterfall approach. We needed a team that was able to move and be flexible. So we knew that we needed to increase the capacity. So we went out and we found two more application engineers to support that engineer. And this felt better to us as well because what if something happened, heaven forbid, to the application engineer? We would be so screwed. We needed to have some backup just in case, just like we had some backup on the full stack on the back end and stuff. So now we had a night. The other thing we did is we ended up removing the QA engineer and moving to a different project because we felt like we had enough covered here. Although now I'm thinking about it, I think he came back later in the project in the months just because we needed everybody. It was all hands on deck. And I think the client brought in some people to do some quality assurance as well. Like everybody was banging on that app to make sure it was good for the conference. So you can see that all this stuff happens, and so this is what the month started looking like towards the end. Is we were putting in a considerable amount of hours, and I don't know if we scroll back all the way to the beginning. This is stark contrast to the not only the break even of what needed to happen for the agency to make their money to cover their costs, but also just to take advantage of the resources that we had for the benefit of the client. So all that is to say, I'm a huge fan of these burn up charts. And you will, just a quick review, we'll have with burn up charts. Um, Again, I love using charts. Burn down charts are a fan favorite for the Agile community, but I personally love the burn up chart. You take something that you need, can measure in aggregate, you look at your units of time, and then every unit of time you are measuring out what it is. And you'll see a lot of back and, well, you won't see back and forth in this type of aggregate burnup chart. What you'll see is more like a line, and then it goes up, and then it'll go like this, and it'll go like this, and maybe it goes back and forth over the line, and that's okay. But it gives you a concept of whether or not you're on track to hit your goal. Um, and even if even if whoops, you go you do a great job early and you don't do any more work towards that and it just flatlines, hey, you hit your minimum goal. You can go home. The same thing if you manage to just knock it out of the park and go all the way up here. Um, and you know, you're done. You don't need to do anything more. You can go on vacation. But if you're over here and you just never quite, make that goal, like you get a very good sense very quickly about whether people are putting in the time, or you're reaching that goal because you can just do trend lines to figure out and make adjustments week over week or day over day or whatever increment that you have in time. So that's a case study. The client was really happy because they had a great conference event, lots of positive press and good connections and relationships were made because they had working software and working product. The agency was thrilled because not only did they make the money and cover their costs, but they made some profit and managed to grow the team and hire some additional people as part of that. And we were happy because we had this great case study that we could share with all of you. So if you have any questions about this and other ways that we can help people out, I'm always down to geek out on this stuff. So I hope you reach out and we'll talk.